If you are here, that means that you have already completed either view A or B of the bodice or view C of the bodice. Now you need to decide if you want to do a tapered skirt or a flared skirt. Either way, I'm going to show you how to do both and attach the skirt to the bodice and finish off our lining. Now I have placed my fabric with right sides together, lengthwise with selvage edges meeting, and I have laid my pattern pieces on top. Now we have already done this with our previous pattern pieces, so this shouldn't be new to you. Make sure that you notice that skirt front, if you're doing the tapered skirt, says to place on the fold of your fabric, so you want to make sure that you do that. And that your grain line, your directional line, is parallel to the selvage edge. You're going to cut around your pattern pieces for the skirt front and back, and then you're going to cut these same pieces out again out of lining. You're going to do the same thing if you're doing the flared skirt. I'm cutting my tapered skirt out of the dark purple, and I'm going to cut my flared skirt out of my ivory fabric. So decide which one you're going to do and cut out your pieces. Whether you're doing the tapered skirt or the flared skirt, you should have the following pieces. If you're doing the flared skirt, you should have your front piece cut on the fold and 2 pieces for your back, along with the same exact pieces cut out of lining. If you're doing the tapered skirt, then you should have 2 pieces for the back and 1 piece cut on the fold for the front, and the same exact pieces cut out of lining. Now we can get to sewing. For the flared skirt, we're going to pin at our dot, starting with our back pieces. So this is the back of our skirt, and I have right sides facing each other. And we're going to start to sew from the dot that's just below our notch to the bottom of our skirt. Using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I want you to press that seam open. So we're going to press our seam allowance. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our front piece and we're going to place it right sides facing. And we're going to sew our side seam. So match up your side notches and pin. And pin at the top and then pin at the bottom. And starting at the bottom, working our way up, we're going to sew our side seam. 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And you're going to sew the other side the same way. Pin at your notch, pin at the bottom, pin at the top, and sew 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you've sewn the side seams of your skirt, you're going to continue on and do your lining the same exact way that you did your skirt. Now I have simply shortened the lining of my skirt by 5/8 of an inch so that it doesn't peek out from underneath my skirt, and I simply serged the edge. Now for the skirt, I serged the edge, but I'm going to turn it under 5/8 of an inch, and I'm going to sew my hem down. So you want to place your needle close to the edge, but not too close. And we're going to sew 5/8 of an inch turned over all the way around. Now that we finished our skirt and our hem, and we finished our lining and serged our hem, we can continue on with attaching our skirt to our bodice. Now the following steps are the same for both views, so continue along whether you're doing the flared skirt or the tapered skirt. Take your lining and we're going to sew it right sides together to the bottom of our lining band. Start at your side seams and go ahead and pin. Remember, right side's facing. Pin at your notches. Pin the back edge, match your notches. And now we're going to sew our skirt to the bottom of our band using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now you have attached your skirt to your band, and now you have one full lining. And you're going to attach the bottom of your skirt the same way to the bottom of your fabric band. Okay, as you can see, I pinned the bottom of my skirt, or the waist of my skirt, to the bottom of my band. And now we're going to sew all the way around the way we did for our lining. You want to press your seams open the same way that we did the seams that attach the band to our bodice. And you want to press these open for both your fabric and your lining. As you can see, I pressed my seam allowance open on my lining and on my dress. And so now if you slip your lining inside of your dress, you will see that you have now lined the entire dress, and you have a nice clean finish on the inside and on the outside. I'm going to show you how to install an invisible zipper without using an invisible zipper foot. Instead, we're just going to use a standard zipper foot. So what I want you to do is I want you to pull your dress out just a little bit from that lining. And we're going to start where we stopped stitching before, at that notch and at that little dot. And we're going to sew a basting stitch all the way up to the top of our neck. So what I want you to do is I want you to put a pin at the notch where we stopped sewing earlier. And then I want you to pin at your waistband so that we can make sure that our seam lines align once we have our zipper in. So it's important that we pin here. And then I want you to pin again at the top of the band where it meets the bodice. I'm going to pin halfway up your back and put a pin. And then we're going to pin at the very top. Starting at the pin, we're going to put our needle in, and we're going to sew a basting stitch, the longest stitch possible that you have on your sewing machine. Now I want you to press this seam open. Once you have your seam pressed open, we're going to lay our zipper with the invisible side down and with our zipper pull above our neckline because we don't want that in the way. And we're going to pin to one side seam, to one seam allowance, my bad. So you're going to pin to this one side seam, aligning the center of the zipper with the center of the seam line. And you're just going to pin till you get all the way down to the bottom. And when you get to the bottom, I want you to pin through all layers. And now starting at the top, I want you to sew a basting stitch all the way down. And remember, you're only sewing on the one seam allowance, everything else is to the left of you. You're going to turn it around and you're going to do the same thing, working from the bottom all the way up. And working only on this one seam allowance, everything else should be to the left of you. Once you have it basted, I want you to take that pin and I want you to pin through all layers again. And then you're going to turn this to the right side. And we're going to remove our basting stitch. You're going to remove your basting stitch until you reach your pin. Okay, now we're going to open up our zipper. And you can pull that pull as far down as you can go. And then we're going to work on the wrong side again. So turn your dress wrong side out. And starting at the top, we're going to sew using a regular length stitch close to our zipper teeth as possible. So I've moved my needle all the way to the left, and as I sew, I'm going to be pulling open my zipper teeth and sewing as close to that as I can get. You can have your presser foot help you as you're going along. Kind of push these zipper teeth open. you're going to do the same thing on the other side, starting at the bottom. Now, when you turn your dress to the right side, you can pull your zipper and now you have a beautiful invisible zipper and your seam lines are aligned. Now that we have our zipper installed, we're going to close out the rest of this. So turn it to the inside so you can see your seams, and you're just going to continue where you stopped stitching. So go back to your regular presser foot, your regular length stitch, and your needle in the regular position. And you want to insert your needle where you stopped stitching previously so that you start in the same place. Backstitch, and you're going to sew all the way to the end and backstitch. Now that we've closed that, we're going to do the same thing to the other side. And now we can go ahead and trim off the excess zipper. And do the same thing on the other side. Put your needle where you had stopped stitching before. And you're going to backstitch and sew to the edge. Go ahead and clip off the extra zipper and any loose threads. Now, to avoid a messy slip stitch on the top of your zipper or at the neckline, we're going to sew some of this using our sewing machine, and then you can continue closing it with your needle, hand needle, and slip stitch it. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull some of that lining and you're going to lay it over the top as much as you can, like this. And I'm going to have you pin across. And you could probably get a little bit more. The less I have to slip stitch, the better. Okay, and so now we're going to sew from the top down to our last pin, and you're going to sew close to the zipper teeth. You'll be able to see them and kind of feel them over the top of your lining. Just make sure you don't sew through your zipper teeth. Looks like I can go just a little further. Now what I'll do is I'll clip this corner. And then I'm going to pull my hand through here and pull it out. And now we have at least sewn a considerable amount of our lining to our dress without having to slip stitch it, and the top edge of our neckline is really nicely finished. And then you can continue to sew this using a slip stitch by aligning your seam lines and finishing it off. We're going to do the same thing on the other side, so I'll show it to you again. You're going to pull out some of your lining and you're going to lay it over the top. And you're going to pin as far down as you can go. I like to go pretty far down, so I will squish and move as much as I can. And now we're going to sew from the bottom up. Clip the corner, stick my hand in and pull it out. And now we've sewn down the other side. Now all we have left to do is to sew the hem of our lining and the hem of our sleeve. So first we'll start with our lining, and of course on the wrong side we're going to turn over a double hem. So we're going to turn over a 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to turn over again a 1/2 inch. And I'm going to sew all the way around my lining, close to the folded edge. Now that we've sewn the hem of our lining, all that's left to do is the hem of our sleeve, and so I'm going to do a double fold. So I'm going to fold over 3/8 of an inch, and then I'm going to fold over again 3/8 of an inch. I'm going to sew close to the folded edge. And you're going to do the same thing on the other sleeve. And then you are all done. And we're done. I hope you've enjoyed sewing along with me, and I will see you guys again very soon. Peace.